So guys, you want to look sharp at the office? Well, the men's store at JCPenney is all about making that happen. Right now, during the men's wardrobe sale, get 50% off all suit separates, sport coats, and dress pants. We'll even knock an extra 20% off with your JCPenney credit card and coupon, or 15% off with any other form of payment. Bottom line, we know you mean business, and your style is a big part of it. The men's store at JCPenney. When it fits, you feel it. Coupon required. Valid 11/12 to 11/16. 20% offer subject to credit approval. Some exclusions apply. Check newspaper at jcp.com for coupon and details.
It's a football Sunday doubleheader. First in Green Bay, the Packers face the Lions.
Got it! Touchdown!
Then at MetLife Stadium, the Giants host the undefeated Patriots. Coverage begins Sunday at noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.
Here's what's coming up on the First Take podcast. Will Rex and the Bills get a win against the Jets tonight? Plus, the Cowboys react as Greg Hardy sends a message on Twitter. And will JPP's comments fire up Tom Brady on Sunday? That and so much more coming up on the podcast. Oh, good Thursday to you. Welcome into First Take on this Friday Eve. Skip Bayless and Molly Karam here in studio. Stephen A. joins us from Philly. Gentlemen, how we doing?
What's up? What's up? Good morning. How y'all doing?
Good.
I can't wait for one topic down the line on this show. Porzingis is becoming the savior, the new superstar of the New York Knicks, and I can't wait to hear you bloviate about it.
I have no comment.
Yeah, I know, because you're going to have no comment when we get to the topic.
Plead the fifth.
Yeah.
All right, let's work, gentlemen. Cowboys defensive end Greg Hardy proclaimed his innocence on Twitter by changing his Twitter profile a brief time on Wednesday morning. Here it is, quote, innocent until proven guilty. Lack of knowledge and information is just ignorance. The unjust treatment of different categories of people is discrimination. He wrote this in the account's bio. Now he's changed his bio and name again on Twitter. The change Hardy made on his bio was addressed by Jason Garrett yesterday. Here's Garrett on the Hardy situation.
I think the biggest thing we try to do with any player is just address things when they come up, and we address them in-house, and we deal with things inside these walls, and then we move forward.
Skip, what should Jerry Jones do?
Molly, Stephen A. Smith, I've seen enough. As a lifelong Cowboy fan, I'm here to tell you it is time for Jerry Jones to cut Greg Hardy. And I'm talking about Stephen A. for the good of the locker room, for the good of the football team that I do root for. I don't root for Greg Hardy, but I do root for the Dallas Cowboys. And Greg Hardy has become more trouble than he is worth as a football player. He's become an embarrassment and now a distraction for a football team that is obviously reeling toward the end of its season, potentially at Tampa Bay. Yet I want to point out again, as I have to you, Stephen A., from the start, as a Cowboy fan, I said from the very beginning no to Greg Hardy. Did not want him on my team from the start. Despicable human being, as we saw in the clips that we opened the show with. Convicted of domestic violence in a bench trial in North Carolina. That's all I needed to know. Enough is enough. But now I'm just talking about from a football perspective, how Greg Hardy contributes or detracts from this team's ability to win and lose football games. So now he's been involved in a very short stay with the Dallas Cowboys in 4 different, let's just call them incidents. He has only 4 sacks. He's so far helped this team lose all 4 games in which he has played. 0-4 since he returned from his suspension that he served as a 4-game suspension. So, Stephen A., I look at this and I say, remember the first interview he did? I was out of my mind about that, how remorseless he was, how insensitive he was. I said, I'm ashamed and embarrassed as a Cowboy fan. And then you saw the clip again. We both went off about him barging into that special teams huddle. Like the idea of it, sort of the motivation of it, as he rebuked his teammates for allowing the 100-yard kickoff team by your Giants. But then he knocks the clipboard out of the coach's hands, and it's another embarrassing incident. Then he goes on Twitter last weekend with a non-apology apology that was just insulting to everybody's intelligence, that he regrets what happens in North Carolina, what happened in North Carolina. And he dug his PR hole even deeper. Now, as Molly read, to this. I guess he's proclaiming his innocence now on Twitter. They took it down, but nobody in this team can control Greg Hardy. Clearly, he's out of control, in need of more anger management. We saw from the sideline huddle, the special teams huddle. And obviously, Jason Garrett can't control him. Jason Garrett's just a Stepford coach to me, who robotically continues to say, we have dealt with this internally. Baloney. We know who runs the operation. Jerry Jones does. Do I think that Jerry Jones is loving the attention that Greg Hardy generates for a team that doesn't deserve any now, as it's plummeted to 2-6? Maybe he does. We know Showman Jerry, Barnum and Bailey Jerry, loves the attention sometimes more than winning. But in this case, for the sake of his football team, maybe galvanizing this football team, this locker room, reuniting a football team that can't be united with this distraction, this disgrace in the middle of its locker room as a quote-unquote leader of the team, according to Jerry and Jason Garrett, it's time to cut bait with Greg Hardy. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, I agree with you. I said last week that they needed to cut him immediately in the aftermath of seeing those photos. There are a lot of people who lament the fact that it shouldn't take us seeing photos to draw that conclusion. They are absolutely right. It shouldn't take seeing those photos, seeing Nicole Holder's allegations completely validated in the minds of most people with common sense in this world. Greg Hardy looks like a complete villain. He looks vicious, and clearly what was exacted against Nicole Holder is not to be disputed based on photos that we have seen. It's just that simple. And in the aftermath of all of that, when you see those photos and you imagine what this girl went through at that particular moment in time, the horrific situation that it was, how terrifying it must have been for her, you can't do anything but help have a level of sympathy and empathy to the extreme for her. And as a result of that, you look at Greg Hardy and you think he's a monster. You think that he's somebody that's completely out of control. And it's just that simple. So if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you have to make that decision, not because of your football team, but on behalf of all women out there who have been abused, who have suffered from abuse, particularly when you're Jerry Jones and your daughter has worked vehemently in support of those who have been domestically abused. To sit there and to have Greg Hardy on your team, one would argue, is an insult to the very daughter of Jerry Jones, by Jerry Jones himself. So that's something that he needs to consider, and that's why I think that you have to make the move that you have to make. But let me not sit up here and be a hypocrite. When Greg Hardy was first acquired by the Dallas, when the 10-game suspension was handed down to him by Commissioner Roger Goodell, I was in complete support of him being a member of the Cowboys, simply because I felt it was low risk, high reward. Here's a situation where he certainly can't afford to do anything like that again. He was handed the 10-game suspension, which all of us deemed acceptable. Combined with that 10-game suspension, you were going to have a situation where he was going to be on a check-to-check, week-to-week basis with the Dallas Cowboys. So it was simply low risk. And obviously, we'll talk about it later on in the show, how rooting for a team, for a team doesn't necessarily mean that you're rooting for a player. We'll debate that issue a little bit later, Skip Bayless. But in the grand scheme of things, what he did was reprehensible. But I think we need to focus. We need to reel things in and get down to what this really is all about. Greg Hardy hasn't suffered enough in the eyes of a lot of people. It really comes down to that. Had he been suspended for 10 games, okay, then we would have sat there and said, okay, he's got 10-game suspension. Had he been suspended for the season, had he spent about 6 months in jail, then we wouldn't be saying this. We would consider him a deplorable, reprehensible human being, but we would move on from there. The real problem that everybody's having here is that he missed all but one game of last year, but was still paid $13.1 million. He got suspended 10 games, but then that was reduced to 4 games. He's still in a position to collect a vast chunk of the $11.3 million he has the potential to earn with the Dallas Cowboys by being a member of the Cowboys this season. So we see a guy didn't serve a day in jail, didn't get punished by the legal system, had his record completely expunged last week, still got paid millions last year for not playing, still getting paid millions this year for losing, while, by the way, bringing bad publicity to the very franchise that you're supposed to represent. So when we look at it from that perspective, clearly people are going to have a problem with it, because in our society, what you want is a healthy level of contrition that was earned by having to pay and deal with the ramifications of your actions. We see an individual that hasn't had to deal with any ramifications. So we have a problem with him there. And then he doesn't help the situation because he clearly has a screw loose. He's not himself. And as a result, you hear from the things that he says. You know, when he came out with his first interview, guns blazing, talking about Tom Brady, then his wife, then his wife's sister, then talking about how, you know, going into the huddle and smacking down the coach's clipboard and getting in the face of his teammates. Then after that, sending a tweet out there proclaiming his innocence, when clearly he looks guilty as sin. So when you look at all of these things, Skip Bayless, you might call him a despicable human being. I would say this to you. The only reason I stop short of that in any capacity is because I think this dude has a problem. I mean, I think that what he did to Nicole Holder, what we believe he did to Nicole Holder, I think he'd do it to anybody. This ain't a Ray Rice situation to me where you got Ray Rice and he's getting into an issue with his then fiance, now wife, and what have you. And then he's forced to deal with the ramifications of his action. And after that, well, you know what? Contrition kicks in. And he's so sorry for everything that he's done. And he's trying to make amends for it and rehabilitate himself and his life. I'm looking at a Greg Hardy. I really believe he doesn't realize what he's done. This brother's got a problem. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at Charles Barkley's letter to the masses via the Bleacher Report yesterday rather. I read the entire letter on my radio show. Why? Because Charles Barkley, I didn't agree with everything that he said. Please don't get me wrong. I didn't agree with everything that he says. But I did agree with what he said when he says, this guy needs help. This is a different kind of cat here. Something is wrong with Greg Hardy. Other people they're despicable and they're just trying to get away with stuff, and that's just what they want to do to people. Greg Hardy, to me, seems to be somebody who has no control. And I think everybody needs to be worried about somebody like him because he seems that much of a loose cannon. Something is wrong with this dude. If I'm talking about the guy that you see on the sidelines, and you see those photos, you tell me what do you see that's different. You tell me what you see. I don't see deception. I don't see manipulation. I see somebody who appears to need help.
Okay, we know all that you talked about in the past. I'm going to restate my position to you. I didn't want him in the first place. The pictures changed zero for me. I just needed her testimony that I read back in the bench trial. That was enough. Despicable, out, shouldn't be back on my Dallas Cowboys. But as you also concur with me on, he was eligible to be signed. He paid his price to the NFL. I didn't like the price. But I didn't like the price take either. Issue with the Players Association because they got it reduced from 10 to 4.
Listen.
Well, they did.
Of course, I can. Technically, theoretically, I can take issue with the Players.
Well, you should.
Well,
you just should.
Allow me to explain. Allow me to explain. Because this is serious business here. Of course, we take issue with it. But they're a union. And unions have an obligation to protect the members of its union. We don't like it. And I agree with Shannon Sharp. Too many times we put pressure on the leagues. How come we won't amp up the pressure on our justice system? You have a situation where Greg Hardy is able to get off, doesn't serve a day of time.
He did. He got off because of what I think is a sort of a quirky North Carolina law, a loophole that allows you to appeal for a jury trial. And then, as we all know, just to restate this for those who don't know, she failed to cooperate when it came time for the jury trial, and the authorities said it appears that she has been paid off by Greg Hardy. So that was the end of it. He is exonerated. He's off the hook.
No. I understand that. We've explained that on several occasions, Skip. But you brought up the Players Association. And I'm bringing up the fact that more of an onus is on the leagues than it is on the justice system. If you're a Players Association, I don't like it You don't like it. We don't think it's right.
Okay,
We think
all
it's
right.
despicable. But when you have a justice system, a murderer can walk into court, Skip. He is obligated to have legal
Okay.
representation.
All right,
If
we
he
got
can't
it.
provide it, the court will provide it for him.
All
How
right.
are we going to turn around and point to the union
Okay.
when the justice system does the same
All
thing?
right. Well,
How
I
are we
didn't
going to
like
do that?
I didn't like the 10 games, and I didn't like it reduced to 4. I said at least 1 year,
Neither
and it
did
should
I.
have stood as 1 year. But now, to my point, I'm talking about as a fan of a football team that is reeling. Now I'm just on a football level. He has to go because Charlotte Jones Anderson said from the start, I'm on board because we have programs in place to rehabilitate. I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing a guy they
Right.
cannot control. We know he has anger management issues. He had them in Carolina. It's part and parcel as to why he's one of the best pass rushers in pro football. But to the point of the Eagles on Sunday night, they're all saying he seemed out of it. I think it's getting to him mentally. All the distractions, all the pressure. He's losing it, and they can't control him from losing it. Why didn't they?
Exactly.
Why didn't they prep him for the first interview he did? Why didn't the PR staff say, "Hey, maybe you should think about being a little remorseful here and be careful what you say. You know, mind your P's and Q's here because you could step in it." And he stepped all over it. Okay, and then why wouldn't you shut down his Twitter account?
Yes, thank you,
Why
Skip.
why wouldn't you just tell him, hey, Greg, it's not real wise right now to have that kind of an outlet to the world because you might get emotional some night, you might go a little over the edge, and you might hit send, and he did it twice. He hit send twice, and it makes him look even worse than he does, which is pretty hard to do. So I'm just saying that's a team problem. If the team can't control him, you've got to cut bait for the sake of your team. Trust me, Jason Witten and Tony Romo in the locker room, you think they love having Greg Hardy in there? I say no. I say it would bring the team back together if Jerry Jones would finally admit that he was wrong, swallow his pride, forget about all the attention that Greg Hardy is generating for his lousy Cowboys, and say, I've seen enough. We've got to go forward. He's more trouble than he's worth. End of story.
Well, evidently it's not the end of the story because there's more to go. He needs to go. I said that last week. You said that before he even got there. We agree. The problem is he's still there. And the things that you highlighted, Skip, this dude doesn't see it. He doesn't see it. You know, who are we to say that the Dallas Cowboys didn't prep him? Who are we to say that they didn't talk to him?
I doubt it.
He doesn't seem
They
to
seem
be
afraid of
listening
him.
to anybody. Wait a minute. Listen, a lot of people seem afraid of him.
Yep.
But when his teammates went and talked to him, who was he listening to then? This dude seems loose.
Yeah.
He seems like he's got some big time problems. But for the purposes of public consumption, it's important to highlight the fact that you have people out there in our society. If you pay a price for your transgressions, people are usually very forgiving. Ray Rice ain't playing because Ray Rice ran average 3.1 yards a carry in his last year that we saw him and only rushed for 660 yards that season and didn't seem to be great to begin with when he ended up leaving the game. That's why he hasn't been back.
Sure.
But in terms of his level of contrition and how sorry he appears to be, there is no question he has made a concerted, if not a valiant effort to resurrect his career and his life. Greg Hardy walks around looking at us like, what the hell y'all are talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. Ain't nothing happened. Nothing happened. He will sit there in the aftermath of the photos, Skip, Molly, and literally will look at you. That's what he did on Twitter.
Yeah, he's
And
in
what you
denial.
talking
He's
about?
delusional.
Innocent. Exactly. So I'm like, what does that tell you? You got to get rid of him, but he's got to pay a price. And in the meantime, he's got to get some help because he ain't right. I don't know. I'm no psychologist or anything like that. I'm just projecting. I'm just speculating. He's not right. Something wrong with this boy. Something really wrong.
Agreed. We all agree. He needs to be off the Cowboys, he needs to be off Twitter, and he needs to get help. Let's talk some football. How about it? We have a great one tonight. Rex Ryan makes his return to MetLife to face his former team, the New York Jets. IK Enemkpali will be the captain of Bills Mafia for this one. Now, forget all the wonderful off-the-field storylines. The actual matchup has the biggest playoff implications of Week 10. The Jets are 5-3. The Bills are 4-4. Stephen A., Bills, Jets, who wins?
Well, I'm going with the Jets. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick is supposed to play last time I checked, and I think that, he'll do what he can not to lose this game. Hopefully the Jets' running attack will return. You just look at them right now in their defense. I mean, Tyrod Taylor is no joke, and you got to be mindful of him. And LaShawn McCoy had a decent game last week. You got to be mindful of that as well. But I think this defense, how hyped up they'll be to go up against Rex Ryan's Buffalo Bills, I think they'll ultimately do the trick, and they'll get the job done. And I think that Tyrod Taylor doesn't have the multitude of weapons you would need in order to beat this Jets defense. The Jets have to show up, please don't get me wrong. This is not a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. But I think it being at MetLife Stadium, I think it being one of those situations where Tyrod Taylor is a relatively inexperienced quarterback, although he can play, going up against this bevy of experienced individuals on the defensive side of the ball, I think it can be a defensive struggle, but I ultimately think it's something that the Jets can pull out. I'm going to pick the Jets to win this game 24-20, Skip.
24-20.
Yes.
You're probably right. I don't love what I'm about to predict. In a vacuum, with no strings attached, I would go with your prediction. I would pick the Jets at the Jets to beat the Bills. But as you know, before the year started, I predicted that the Bills would win a wild card. You predicted that the Jets would win a wild card. So here we are. Bills 4-4, Jets 5-3. Nip tuck for that last wild card, a wild card slot. And I got to have the courage of my convictions, as you ridicule me for saying. I'm going to have to stand strong with my Buffalo Bills today, even though I don't love it, because I think we're getting to that moment of truth here in which we find out, is Rex Ryan a fraud? Is that what he is? Is he just a showman fraud? Is he a sleight of hand, sort of sleight of mouth, great media session giver, a press conference doer? Is that what he is? Is he all about the bluster and not about the results? Because, as you well know, and you keep bringing up, first 2 years with the Jets, they go 20-12 combined, make it to 2 AFC title games. Won 4 playoff games, most in Jets history. And then what happened the last 4 years? As you keep reminding me, nothing. They missed the playoffs the last 4 years in New York. And now I look at the ranks. Last year, the Bills' defense was ranked 2nd in the National Football League. Right now, it's 16th under Rex. Not very good. Last year, the Jets fell to 25th in overall defense. I know they had injuries. I know they didn't have Revis. But now the Jets are hanging right in there at 7th under Todd Bowles and company. So looks like Todd Bowles is doing a much better job so far than Rex was able to do last year. This is a mind-blowing stat to me. Bills won last week to get back to 4-4. Rex is 2-17 after a win. I think it's over the last 4 years. 2-17 after a win. That's terrible.
Since 2012.
Since 2012, yeah. So what do I got going for me? Well, you had some reservations about Tyrod Taylor taking over this team. I got to tell you, he's turning into a pretty special playmaker in this league. He makes a lot of big plays. I hope he's healthy. He had the knee injury. He looked pretty good last week. Still completing 72% of his passes. It's pretty special. And again, against the Jets, who blitz number 1, the most in the National Football League, against the blitz, Tyrod's completing 69% of his passes. So tonight, I got to go with my man Tyrod. I think he's going to make some plays against the blitz that inevitably will come. Sammy Watkins had his career-high 168 yards and receptions last week. Maybe he's ready to break out. I'm not sure LaShawn's right. He's got a banged-up shoulder, hasn't really been practicing, but is supposed to go. And I don't know. Maybe there's enough playmaking there because Tyrod, when he's been healthy, is 4-2. So I'm going to go. I like your 24, so I'll give it to my Bills. I'll give the Jets 22. 24-22, and the Bills make a wild card statement. And maybe Rex makes a little statement as he goes back up against his Jets, because if they stink it up tonight, I think we're going to have to start wondering whether Rex is for real or not.
Well, let me piggyback off of that to say this about Rex Ryan. Skip Bayless, Rex Ryan is under the microscope right now more than ever before. And here's why. Even in a couple of years that he helped guide the New York Jets to the AFC Championship game as their head coach, he had Mark Sanchez as his quarterback. Now you've got this kid, Tyrod Taylor. It's fair to say, Skip Bayless, he's got a real legitimate quarterback for the first time in his head coaching career. Because if you remember, it was Mark Sanchez, and then, I don't even remember who the hell it was after that, to be quite honest with you. I know Geno ultimately came. But the point is that, and you got Greg McElroy out of Alabama, and I forgot who else. I mean, you just had a potpourri of individuals, none of who were exceptional, and it was what it was. The way that Tyrod Taylor is playing, and you've got LaShawn McCoy and Carlos Williams, two individuals who both ran for over 100 yards last week against Miami. And you've got a stud like Sammy Watkins, who, by the way, was targeted 8 times and caught all 8 passes for 168 yards last week against Miami. Although it was against Miami, here's the reality. The weapons on the Buffalo Bills offense is decent enough where if Rex is what he's supposed to be as a defensive mind, the Buffalo Bills have no business being a 500 football team. And they certainly should beat the Jets tonight. I don't think it will happen. We will see what will happen. But I think that for the rest of this season, we need to give Rex Ryan the microscope he evidently craves so much, because he's got enough pieces on offense to keep you in contention of any game besides New England. It's his defense that needs to step up. And if the defense ain't stepping up, who do we need to look at, Skip?
You got it. I agree. It has not stepped up so far this year. It better step up tonight. And I think it will. I wouldn't bet a lot of money on it, but it's go Tyrod go tonight for me.
I'm really excited for this game.
Defense. By the way, the defense is ranked 16th, Skip, and 24th against the pass.
All right, so major playoff implications on the line. Stephen A has the Jets 24-20. Skip has the Bills 24-22. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So the Mavericks beat the Clippers in Dallas. DeAndre Jordan had 9 points, 11 rebounds against his almost team. Chandler Parsons had this to say on ESPN.com on DeAndre's return. Quote, he's not a priority to us, and by the looks of their team, he's not to them either. Ouch. Shots fired, Stephen A. What was your takeaway from this game?
Well, my takeaway is on the positive side for the Dallas Mavericks. I can't say enough about Dirk Nowitzki. He's a future Hall of Famer. He was absolutely spectacular last night, finishing with 31 and 11, hitting big shots, outplaying Blake Griffin, which, by the way, surprised me. Considering the way that Blake Griffin has been playing, I definitely expected more from him last night. It's beautiful to see Wesley Matthews out there. Skip, I've always been a fan of this guy. I loved him when he was playing in Portland with Damian Lillard. The minute he went down, I knew that Portland had no shot the rest of the season, because he's got an iron will, like Coach Rick Carlisle continuously says. He's not scared of anything. He always wants to fight. He goes out there. He can't just score. He defends as well. And he was harassing Chris Paul all night long, helping to limit him to 2 for 11 shooting, just 11 points for Chris Paul. Obviously, I expected better from him as well as Blake Griffin. DeAndre Jordan, when you look at the night that he had, it's not surprising. I mean, what did he have here? He had 9 points. He had 11 rebounds. I'm surprised he had just 1 block, but Dallas shoots a lot of perimeter shots. But once again, he only played 27 minutes or so. Why, Skip? Because they kept fouling him. And you go 3 for 9 from the free throw line. That's 33%, which is around what he shoots for the season, because he came in the game shooting at 34%. This is what is holding the Clippers back. Because when DeAndre Jordan is on the floor, both offensively and defensively, he is a force to be reckoned with. If the brother could just hit free throws, it would change everything for the Los Angeles Clippers. So when we think about what Chandler Parsons had to say, he's right on the money. Sure, it was a dig. And sure, listen, Mark Cuban, the Dallas Mavericks, eventually you got to let it go. But this was his first time in Dallas since reneging on his deal to go there. So we understand that. But the point is that at the end of the day, he's not a priority for the Clippers. Chandler Parsons sat there, and he's right. Doesn't seem to be a priority offensively. Defensively, he obviously does. But offensively, he is not. Why? Because you got to be able to make free throws. You got to be able to close. Because when you can't do that, They just get to foul you and disrupt the flow and the rhythm offensively of the rest of your team. And if you're Doc Rivers and the Clippers, you can't afford to let him do that. So that's the situation. It is what it is. Dallas is 4-4. Amazingly, I'm shocked by that because of the personnel they don't have. But nevertheless, the Clippers, to me, what I learned from this is that Rick Carlisle, once again, can still coach his butt off. Dirk Nowitzki's a star. Wesley Matthews is a stud if he can stay healthy. And the Clippers, however, are a very good team who will not be great unless they find a way to offset DeAndre Jordan's free throw shooting.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm just going on emotions. I watched this whole game, and I loved every last drop of it for the sake of the Maverick fans. I think they all had a great time at this game. And I can relate to Maverick fans because, if you remember, I covered this franchise from its inception for its first 18 years of existence. So I think I know their heartbeat and their psyches. They're not like, let's say, Philly fans who are going to boo Santa Claus. They're not like that. They're not mean-spirited. They're not nasty to me. I guess you could, there might be one or two somewhere, but in general, they just like to go scream and yell for their Dallas Mavericks. And last night, they weren't, I don't think anybody threw anything. I didn't hear anything about anything getting thrown. So it was just, they just booed DeAndre Jordan upon his return. And what I loved about it was, as I said on the show yesterday, they could boo him the most when he was standing by himself at the free throw line. And it was just a joy to watch him miss 6 out of his 9 free throws because it just brought the house down. It was fun. And again, he spurned them, he burned them, and they got a small measure of revenge last night. Just a little slice of early season justice. That's all it was. It doesn't amount to a whole lot. I wish Rick Carlisle had fouled him more, to your point, because he's a disaster at the free throw line. He's shooting 34% for the year. He was 33% last night. And I wanted, as I said yesterday, I wanted to see him shoot 29 free throws. I thought Rick kind of took the high road there. Because down the stretch, especially toward the 2-minute mark, you could have put him on the line even more than they did. They did some. He made a couple late, but 3 out of 9. So my point is that it was a fun game to watch for the Maverick fans. They got even for the year, 4-4. Dirk had a big night. He had 5 out of 6 threes, as you point out. Last one might have been a little lucky. I don't think he called glass on it, but it went in. It was their night. So good for Maverick fans. You got to take it out on a guy. And Stephen A., you make the point he's a good guy. I think DeAndre's, if I can, he's more lover than fighter. I think he's like good-hearted guy. A lot of guys would get their mad on and go back into Dallas like they're on a mission to put, shut these fans up. He seemed pretty intimidated, so he goes out early. Wait a second, we got the picture of him. Yeah, he's signing autographs. There he is. So he goes, that was smart, shrewd operator. You go out, you sign autographs, good for you. You butter him up a little bit, and then, he said he was prepared for the worst, and it wasn't all that bad. Because Maverick fans aren't all that bad. They're just going to boo you mostly when you touch the ball, which is rare, and especially when you're at the free throw line. And then to cap it off, the Chandler Parsons dig is subtle but brilliant to me. Not a priority to us, not a priority apparently to the Clippers because he took only 5 shots, and I'm looking at the first 9 players who played for the Clippers, and of those 9, he took the fewest shots. Well, we know that. He's not going to be a priority, and Dallas, their whole pitch was, we're going to build around you. We're going to make you a star here. So good for the Dallas Mavericks.
Well, it was good for them, but let's be clear about something. I mean, like you said, he is a good guy, Skip. He really, really is. But I think that he would have went out there with that dog in him to go after them. What happens is that you're going to get humbled when somebody keeps attacking your weakness. The Dallas Mavericks were letting them know you're going to get but so many shots because we're going to be inclined to foul you a lot. Why? Because we know you can't hit free throws. And so when you recognize that as an impediment, particularly when you're in those hostile confines, and you clearly don't have the confidence that you need to have in order to hit free throws because that's your Achilles heel, then it's going to be problematic for you. And it's just that simple. And so that's what it comes down to. It's not so much that he didn't want to go out there and play lights out, But in the end, if I know you can jump out of the gym, you can dunk on anybody, you can block shots, you can rebound, you can defend, but the thing I'm focused on is fouling you so I can send you to the free throw line, and that's the one Achilles heel that you can't appear to overcome. It'll humble anybody. When somebody continuously goes about the business of attacking not just your weakness, but something you know to be your weakness. And this is why DeAndre Jordan has to sit up there and get free throws. I'm on the record, Skip. Let me be very, very clear. I believe DeAndre Jordan's free throw shooting will cost the Clippers a championship. I think that if a miracle happened and DeAndre Jordan could be left on the floor for 38 to 40 minutes a night, that DeAndre Jordan could hit 75 to 80% of his free throws, I believe the Clippers would win the championship. But he's not going to do that. And that's why they can't even come out of the West, because they got to play without him when it matters most, or depend on his free throw shooting, because you're going to send him to the free throw line. And he just can't deliver in that regard. Everything else about him, I find to be great.
Okay, well, time out. Are you saying that the Clippers should have left him in Dallas? Because that's what you're suggesting. No. No. I'm saying that you have to find a supplementary piece to put in when money time arrives and be okay without him. I think that it's almost, it's not almost, but it's similar to what I say. You know, when we're talking about some of the greatest closers in history, guys that you have in the last 2 minutes, and you would say, well, not LeBron. And I tell you, yeah, but I want LeBron the other 46 minutes. Sure. You know, it's sort of akin to that. Okay, but
I want DeAndre Jordan on my squad.
They subbed for him last night late, game
but
toward the
it's
end.
not good enough. No, I'm saying it's not good enough.
Yeah.
Whatever they do to sub for him, it's too much of a loss when he is off the floor, because he's so formidable defensively. You just need him out there. He neutralizes a lot of things that other people want to do. There's no excuse in the world why the Clippers should be 5-3 right now.
Yeah.
They're too good for this. But when you can foul them, what do you want?
Yeah, well, there's one coach who will put him on the line from start to finish, and that's Coach Popovich. Although I must tell you, the Clippers did beat my Spurs in 7 games, so they overcame that last year.
But that was because of the greatness of Chris Paul and Blake Griffin.
Yeah.
All right.
It was a lot of things, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, let's leave it there.
It's an ESPN Radio Football Sunday doubleheader. First in Green Bay, the Packers look to bounce back from their first back-to-back regular season defeats in years when they face the Lions.
And he's got it! Touchdown!
Then, the undefeated Patriots head to MetLife Stadium to face the Giants.
Touchdown, Rob Gronkowski!
Coverage of the Lions and Packers is at noon Eastern, followed by the Patriots and Giants, Sunday on ESPN Radio.
The Giants are the only team in the NFL that the Patriots have not beaten since the start of the 2008 calendar year. I had to check that. And Jason Pierre-Paul isn't backing down to the perfect Patriots. He said this: they're undefeated, but they'll have to come through here. We'll get to the quarterback. I'm sure of it. I know I will. You don't know. He might have an off game. He might be sick. You don't know. Anything can happen. I hope he's sick. That would be better for us. Stephen A., was this smart to say by one JPP?
Well, you want to hype yourself up as much as you possibly can, because the Patriots are running roughshod over the entire league right now. We understand this. You look at the New York Giants, they've got the 19th ranked defense. They're 31st against the pass, and it's primarily because of their inability to get to the pass rusher. If you're JPP, what you're doing is reminiscing about when the Giants beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl a few years back. Not just once, but twice. You're recognizing how you did that by getting to Tom Brady and making him tap dance in that pocket like the late, great Gregory Hines, God rest his soul. I don't think this Giants defense is capable of it, but I don't think that JPP's comments were nearly as incendiary as some people might be trying to portray it to be. Because he did say, I hope he gets sick. That would help us. You never know. You know, he might have a bad day, something like that. He wasn't sitting there saying, we're better than him. We're gonna humble him. We're gonna do this, that, and the other. He's saying that, you know what? Anything could happen on any given day. Let's hope he gets sick. Let's hope he's not himself. Let's hope he has an off day. So you're recognizing and appreciating the greatness of Tom Brady, while not completely diminishing the hopes of the franchise that you play for. I can respect it. I understand where it's coming from. It will amount to nothing as far as I'm concerned, because I give the Giants a little of a chance to win this particular game, even though this is one of the 3 potential losses that I think the Patriots could have. The Giants to a lesser degree, definitively on November 29th against the Denver Broncos, and quite possibly on December 27th against the New York Jets. I give the Giants the lesser chance of Denver and the Jets, but I did have one of those 3 games on my list that the Patriots could lose, since they're coming to MetLife Stadium. They're going to be on the road, and they're playing against a Giants team that's capable of putting up points. I don't think they're going to win this game, but I don't blame JPP for saying what he said. I don't find it to be that incendiary or unwise. He's basically praying for a miracle, and he's saying, I believe it's possible. I can't knock him for that.
I'll go you one better. I thought it was smart for him to say it. I would have encouraged him to say it if I were a teammate or a coach. And I'm now speaking to true blue Giants fan Molly, and Steelers Giants fan Stephen A. He's like 50-50. But I'm here to tell both of you, by the day, I get more scared about this game as a Brady fan. I'm not so much a Patriots fan as I am a Tom Brady fan. I'm starting not to love Tom Brady's chances in this game, because I feel like the Giants are in the Patriots' heads. I feel like Eli is in Brady's head. I feel like Eli, and I told you two the other day, remember, Eli descended from NFL royalty. He knows his blood is bluer than Brady's blood. He sniffs at Brady and Belichick. Do you think he's intimidated? Do you think he's scared of them? He doesn't care. Eli's a Manning. And when it comes time against Tom Brady, the best quarterback in pro football, Eli continually out-Brady's Brady. Eli turns into Brady in crunch time. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. It is spooky crazy. It is eerily similar how game after game Eli has been Brady late. He's trumped Brady with Brady-esque greatness. It's happened again and again. I remind you, the last regular season game. Remember this one? It was November 6, 2011. I was with the First Take staff. We were at San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston for Veterans Day, so we watched it as a staff together. And it was the craziest finish you'll ever see, because Brady threw it to Gronk late for a touchdown from 14 yards, and it looks like, once again, Brady had done what Brady does. So there's a minute and a half left. Eli gets the ball backed up to his own 20, and he goes 80 yards against Belichick's defense. And with 7 seconds left, Eli hit Jake Ballard, third and goal from the 1-yard line for a touchdown, and they pull it out. It's like, how did you? That was Eli out-Bradying Brady. And we know what happened, especially in the first Super Bowl. Tom Brady went down with a couple of minutes left, hit Randy Moss for the touchdown. It's 14-10, New England. It's like, that's what Brady does. And then we know, I don't even want to get into how Eli did it, but he did it. I got to give it to him. And he finally hit Plaxico for the game-winning touchdown. So why shouldn't JPP say this? Because he's speaking from a position of strength. And again, to your point, Stephen A., obviously the Giants' defense right now, Molly, it's not nearly what it was in either of the Super Bowls, especially the first Super Bowl.
Definitely
it's just not. Okay? But somehow, let's say Brady puts up 38 on Sunday, okay? 38. Now, it's at the Giants. Watch Eli put up 39. I mean, he's capable. He is capable with his weapons. Obviously, Odell and Randall. I'm not doing anything here. I'm just telling you the truth.
Is this your manipulation trying to jinx us? And is that where your mind is going?
I'm telling you the truth.
Yes, it is. You know the Patriots are going to win.
I don't know.
We can't trust that.
I don't know that.
He's trying to jinx me, right?
I know some of the best Patriots fans in this country, and I've been communicating with them this week. They are scared of this game because in the past they haven't been afraid of Eli, and all of a sudden they're saying, maybe Eli's got their number. Maybe it's a hex. It's some Eli jinx where he goes out there and says, what will go wrong for them will go wrong. What can go wrong will go wrong. And for me, what can go right will go right. Do I not have history on your side?
You do, but the Giants aren't that good this year.
Oh, they're just not that good. But Eli, I got to tell you, Eli's been pretty great this year.
I know, but I still think the Patriots are going to win this.
Okay, so Molly, the case is closed because Molly has stated for the record that my Patriots will beat her Giants.
Yes.
It's overdone. They don't even need to play the game. That's where we are.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And America
I like
knows,
it.
too.
Let's cancel the game and just give the
Case
Patriots another
closed.
W. Good.
Whatever. At least you know I'm not that biased. I don't always just pick with my heart.
Well,
I'm a rational woman.
I'm speaking with my heart because the facts scream.
Yeah.
Did Molly
Okay.
just say she was a rational woman? Is that what she just said?
Yes.
Miss Connecticut?
Yes.
You know, rooting for the Giants and showing no objectivity whatsoever when she's talking about her favorite teams. Did she just sit there and say that?
Yes.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Skip, is that what you heard? That's what I heard. Is that what you heard?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're all clear on it.
All right.
I would also like the Dallas fans to acknowledge the sheer lunacy and absurdity that they're booing DeAndre Jordan tonight and they'll be cheering someone like Greg Hardy on Sunday. That, to me, is absurd. All this guy did was change his mind.
Van Gundy suggests there's a double standard in Dallas. Skip, does he have a point?
No, he does not, Stephen A. Molly. I vehemently disagree. But for the record, let me state, Jeff Van Gundy is the best NBA analyst on television, bar none. And I like him even more because occasionally he will have the guts to venture forth with a little opinion that's beyond the game, about larger issues, about pet peeves of his own, Jeff Van Gundy's. But this one, I must admit, really offended me, and I think it's out of bounds. And here's why. I can really speak to this, Stephen A. I am a lifelong Cowboy fan. I attended my first game in 1960, their expansion year, at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas. Eddie LeBaron was the Dallas Cowboy quarterback of the moment. I believe the opponent was the St. Louis Cardinals. That's how far back I go with my Dallas Cowboys. And I told you from the start, I did not want Greg Hardy on my team, but that I would continue to root for my Cowboys, but not for Greg Hardy. Roger Staubach, the great Roger Staubach, whom I covered for many years, knew him very well. He said exactly the same thing a couple of days ago. I root for Dallas, but I do not root for Greg Hardy. And I haven't taken any survey on this, so maybe I'm wrong, but I will bet you a majority of Cowboy fans feel exactly the same way. They root grudgingly for Greg Hardy just because he happens to be part of their Dallas Cowboys that they love with all their hearts and souls. So I got to ask Mr. Van Gundy a question here. What are Cowboy fans supposed to do? Are they supposed to quit watching the Cowboys, quit rooting for the Cowboys because Jerry Jones signed a bad guy? It's not our fault. We're stuck. So I ask again, are we supposed to boycott the Dallas Cowboys because Jerry Jones signed a player who is regarded as maybe the best pass rusher, one of the top 5 pass rushers in all of pro football, who ultimately was not convicted of domestic violence in North Carolina, who did serve his suspension and was completely eligible to be signed by any team? Should we boycott that? Well, I'm not going to. I'm sorry. But I will not root for this man, Greg Hardy. Now back to Maverick fans. Again, as I stated earlier, I don't think anybody threw anything last night. If they did, then they crossed the line. But as paying customers, paying a whole lot of money for those seats, especially the courtside seats, they have every right to boo a player who reneged on his commitment to them last summer and who failed to even man up enough to call Mark Cuban to tell him why he reneged. That's well within their right. I support them wholeheartedly for booing DeAndre Jordan. Conversely, I say it's totally okay and totally within bounds. It's reasonable to think that you can root for the Cowboys without rooting for the despicable Greg Hardy.
Well, my response to you, Skip, is that I totally agree with you. I just don't believe you have anything to be offended by. I don't think Jeff Van Gundy would look at it that way. I disagree with what he said as well, because I think you can root for a team without rooting for a specific player. Specifically when you consider their transgressions, there's no denying that. He was at a Dallas game and he's seeing folks personalizing what happened with DeAndre Jordan and booing him as a result of that. I think Jeff Van Gundy needed to recognize that he does play for the other team, okay? So they were going to boo him anyway. He just gave them even more of an excuse to validate and justify doing so. And as it pertains to Greg Hardy's going to be out there on the field, and if he gets a sack and it stops a game-winning drive by the opposition and saves a game for Dallas, they end up being victorious. It's not Greg Hardy that you're cheering. It's the result of those actions which leads to a victory for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not saying anything that Jeff Van Gundy doesn't know. I'm not saying anything that you don't know, nor myself. I just think that at times we see people engage in such a level of hyperbole and incendiary behavior, and the way they go about the business of really lambasting other individuals. Jeff Van Gundy looked at that and found it a bit ironic, considering all of this stuff that's in the news for Greg Hardy. I think he was a bit misguided with what he had to say. I don't agree with him. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But I take no personal offense to what he said. I don't think that he said something that should have been insulting even to Dallas fans. I think that he said something that makes you stand up and remind yourself that while you're rooting for the Cowboys, you need to be careful as to not coming across as if you're rooting for Greg Hardy, because there's so much stuff that obviously is going on with him. He might have went a little bit too far with it. Again, I agree with you more than I agree with him. But I saw nothing that he said that anybody should take personal offense at. If anything, it should serve as a reminder to put things in perspective. And I think ultimately that's what Jeff Van Gundy was asking for.
Okay, just for the record, I'm emotional about this because I am really, really, really a Cowboy fan. And as I pointed out to you earlier, I covered the Dallas Mavericks from their inception through their first 18 seasons. So I know a lot about those fans and how they feel, what they've been through, their height and their frustrations. I know it. I get it. And it's not fair. It's not a fair comparison on either side. I'm sorry.
Well, that depends. You're right if you're talking about Skip Bayless. You're right if you're talking about people who think like and act like Skip Bayless as it pertains to their fandom for the Dallas Cowboys. But you and I both know, and we repeatedly lament, how society has changed, how things have changed, and obviously not for the better when it comes to how people act, how they fail to put things in its proper perspective, and how far they go sometimes in expressing their incendiary tendencies and ways simply because they feel they have the license to do so. So if you're Jeff Van Gundy and you're at an arena and you're seeing all of this unfold before your very eyes in the same city where Greg Hardy, in your eyes, is being applauded to any degree, despite anything that has happened to him, it's something to say, to bring attention to it, to remind folks that instead of being like this younger generation can be from time to time, make sure you're like Skip Bayless. Make sure you understand the dichotomy that exists between the Cowboys and Greg Hardy, and how they're not one and the same, how they're two separate entities. And indeed, you can root for the Cowboys without rooting for Greg Hardy, because some people might need to hear that, because some people don't have your same level of comprehension.
Yeah. Look, to be fair and balanced here, is it possible that some Cowboy fans, like a lot of fans of other teams, wouldn't care if Jerry went and signed all of his players out of prison, and they won the championship? Would you still, you just say, oh, what the heck, they're just football players? I'm sure there are those. Yeah. But in this case, this is so despicable. It's so over the edge and over the line that I'm pretty sure, and I can't tell you what percentage, that a whole lot of fans are right there with Roger Staubach. I cringe. I don't want to root for, what's his number, 76? I don't want to root for 76, but I'm going to pull for my Cowboys to win somehow, some way. And, of course, as I pointed out, he's played 4 games with a total of 4 sacks, and they are 0-4 in those 4 games. So the patience is running, wearing thin for him just on a football perspective.
Listen, I feel the exact same way if Lawrence Taylor was still playing today.
Would you really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
A 2-7 start has caused tension in Sacramento's locker room, once again sending the team into controversy involving DeMarcus Cousins and George Karl. A report Wednesday from the Big Lead suggested Kings GM Vlade Divac is already contemplating a coaching change, asking his players if he should fire him. DeMarcus Cousins issued an apology to Yahoo Sports and ESPN.com for his expletive-laden outburst toward Karl after the Kings lost to the Spurs on Monday. Stephen A., break this down for us. What's going on here?
Well, what's going on is that George Karl doesn't have the level of control of this team that he should have. And I say that begrudgingly. I take no pleasure in saying that, Skip. George Karl used to work here at ESPN with us. George Karl coached in the NBA for many years in Seattle and Denver. I know him. I've got a lot of love for him. I think he's an exceptional basketball coach. But I think this particular situation, particularly in the aftermath of his battles with cancer, the fact that he's aging to some degree, all of those things being considered, it would have been better for him to have a more experienced and accomplished team, at least to some degree, because he knows what to do with guys who are consummate professionals as opposed to individuals who are really good guys, a little bit different, but learning as we go along. Somebody like Rudy Gay, for example, is a really good guy and a very good player, averaging 17 points a game, dropped 25 last night in their win against Detroit, ending a 6-game losing streak. But, you know, you don't look at him and see a leader. You look at him and see a good player who's a consummate professional. You look at DeMarcus Cousins, I think he's the best big man in the game. And I think that he gets a bad rap in terms of being a bad guy because he's not. But he does come across as a bit sensitive at times. He wears things on his sleeve to a lesser degree. He speaks his mind, and sometimes he loses his temper. And that's going to be difficult for some people to accept. Rondo comes in there. He's got a triple-double last night, played 48 minutes for the second straight game because Darren Collison and Seth Curry have been out, and they haven't been there to spell for him, and he put forth a triple-double, and that was great to see. But at the same time, we know that Rondo has had his issues and are you in a position to really lead? That's the question. And so when you have so many questions, your coach has to be able to step in and be the kind of guy that not just has the message, but that has the cachet and the presentation skills to deliver it in a way to you that will galvanize the troops and motivate them to really just squeeze every measure of potential out of themselves. I don't think at this stage of his career that that's where George Karl is. So do I think he should be let go now? Probably not. Because in this 6-game losing streak, who did they lose to? Memphis and the Clippers and Houston and Golden State and San Antonio. And Phoenix, you were supposed to lose to them because they're better than you. The flip side to it, however, is that even though I wouldn't say that George Karl needs to be let go now, a legitimate argument could be made that he should have been let go before this season even began, because we heard about how bad the relationship was with DeMarcus Cousins and himself. And the fact that it's this early in the season and you have to have a players-only meeting, then a meeting that includes everybody, then DeMarcus Cousins going off in a profanity-laced tirade before turning around and apologizing to everybody and saying he'll be the scapegoat to all of this stuff going on. If it were anyone else, we'd be saying there's a lack of institutional control here. Somebody needs to stir this ship in the right direction. Somebody needs to be the leader. And as great as I think DeMarcus Cousins is, he's too young, too inexperienced, and too emotionally volatile at this moment in his career to put that pressure on his shoulders. He has to have somebody to alleviate that. And in this case, it's supposed to be the coach, but it's not. So you might have no choice but to move in a different direction if you're Vlade. But the point is, it probably should have been done before you were 8 games into the season, 9 games into the season.
Yep. Unfortunately, I agree with you. I've known George Karl for a long, long time. I still say of the current NBA coaches, I'll put his basketball acumen in the top 5. He really, really knows the game. Does he know today's players? Has he lost a little touch? I don't know. But now to DeMarcus Cousins. I'm a big fan. I've gotten to know him a little bit. I pushed for him before that draft. I thought he should have gone number 1 over his teammate John Wall. Stand by that. And I agree with you, Stephen A. DeMarcus still has some problems as he continues to grow up in controlling, channeling his emotions. He lets them run amok on him sometimes. If you want to call it temper or just getting over emotional about any and every little thing, I'll give you that. But I got to tell you, I'm on DeMarcus's side here because George Karl burned that bridge 3 months into the job last year. Remember what happened? He took over in February. Then there was a report by our Mark Stein about 3 months in. George wanted to trade DeMarcus Cousins. And it took the owner and Vlade putting a stop to it to keep DeMarcus in a Kings uniform. Well, I'm not saying George is right or wrong, but I'm a big fan of DeMarcus's. I get he can be a little tough to coach, maybe a little tough sometimes to play with, but I'll tell you what, in the end, in this day and age, right here, right now, DeMarcus is more valuable to that franchise than George is. It's as simple as that. And once you burn that bridge last year and you send a message, even though you don't hate him, that you don't really want him on your team and in your locker room, well, the friction is just going to ebb and flow. It's always going to be an undertow of friction between the star of the team and the coach of the team. And I'm sorry, but George, the story got out there. I know DeMarcus knew all about it. Boy, that the bridge it was at least on fire. I think it burned to the ground. But this is just part and parcel. This is the fallout of wanting to trade DeMarcus Cousins.
You're probably right. The fact is that they got to make a decision because Skip, DeMarcus Cousins, he's got 2 years left on this deal after this season. You're going to have to make a decision because what you don't want to do, what the danger is with DeMarcus Cousins, you don't want to get him to a point where he completely gives up and says, I don't want to be here.
Yep.
You don't want that, okay? And you're right. He is more valuable. I'm going to repeat this. DeMarcus Cousins is the best big man in basketball.
Sure.
This brother walks around averaging 20 and 24 and 12. He's that legit. And now he's added a three-point shot to his repertoire. Okay? So you got to, this is one of those situations where you have to find somebody, we talk like you got to find somebody to manage him. You got to find somebody that knows how to manage the rest of the team while coaching him. Yeah. DeMarcus Cousins ain't the kind of dude that wants to be managed. Because when you say you want to be managed, you're giving the impression that he has a problem. His ultimate problem is losing or feeling betrayed.
Yep.
And whether it's right or wrong in terms of factual as it pertains to George Karl, there is no doubt that DeMarcus Cousins felt betrayed. So if he felt betrayed and he doesn't hide his emotions very well, that's going to be a problem. But then when you couple that by not having the pieces around him to make sure that that's offset by winning, you've made matters worse. And that's what's going on in Sacramento. They're not a very good team, but they got a big-time big man. And so you got a big-time big man, but you haven't surrounded him with the requisite personnel to be a very good team, and you got a coach he feels betrayed them, not to mention that same coach is a coach who just refused 24 hours ago, if not earlier, to answer the questions as to whether or not he wanted to get DeMarcus Cousins traded. So you got all of this going on. And DeMarcus Cousins is the kind of dude that's like, bump this. I ain't taking this. I'm not having it.
Right.
And this is not Kentucky. You can't do something about it. In Kentucky, Calipari was the man.
Yeah.
This is pro basketball. He's getting paid $60 million. Okay, even though he deserves more, by the way. He's getting paid $15 million next year, $16 million the next year after. Let me be clear, DeMarcus Cousins is underpaid because he's that bad, meaning good.
Yeah.
But something has to be figured out here. You got to figure this out before DeMarcus Cousins gets to a point where he says, I don't want to be in Sacramento anymore, because he's the kind of personality, if he gets to that point, ain't no turning him around.
Okay, I hear you. And look, bottom line here for me, I do not want to come across as defending DeMarcus over his profanity-laced tirade directed at his head coach after a loss to my Spurs. But I got to tell you,
absolutely not.
The kid's heart is in the right place. Some kids just want to be a star, and they don't really care about the winning. If it comes, that's fine.
He wants to win.
This kid really, really badly, like crazily, wants to win. Love that about him. And again, if with the right connection, with the right coach channeling that in the right direction, good things will happen.
And to recap,
well, let's make sure.
I'm sorry, Stephen A. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, let's make sure, Skip, we understand something here. The cussing out might not be a product of the 6-game losing streak.
Yeah.
The cussing out might be a product of, I never got over what you did.
I agree.
Or what you say. And so
I'm
Marcus
with you.
Cousins is one of those people. You know how your hair stands up
Yeah,
on
I
your
know.
skin and you
I'm
feel
with
your
you.
skin crawling when somebody's talking behind your back?
Yeah.
We don't know whether it's true or not. But that's what DeMarcus Cousins believes about George Karl.
Right.
That has to change or George Karl has to go.
You
And
got
at
it.
this point, you both believe DeMarcus Cousins is more valuable to the organization than George Karl. The Kings will be
Absolutely.
looking for their
Absolutely.
third win of the season when they host the Nets. That's on Friday.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Ronda Rousey became the first MMA fighter to grace the cover of Ring magazine in the magazine's 93-year history. This drew the attention of recently retired undefeated world champion one Floyd Mayweather, who had this to say to Fight Hype. Well, congratulations. But the sport is starting to look bad when a female fighter from a whole other sport is on the cover of a boxing book. Stephen A., does Mayweather have a point here?
He absolutely has a point. And there are going to be people out there because of what the back and forth that's been going on between him and Ronda Rousey over the last couple of years or so, and they're going to interpret this as him speaking against Ronda Rousey. I in no way took this as him knocking Ronda Rousey. Everybody knows that Ronda Rousey is the face of MMA. She's one of the biggest sports stars in the world, and she's deserving of it. She's super. She's a sensational athlete. She's a sensational champion. She's a treasure for the sport. Any pugilist would admire and respect her, and the rest of us love her. So this is no knock against her whatsoever. But he's talking about Ring magazine. That's boxing. That's not MMA. There has been no MMA fighter that has ever graced the cover of Ring magazine. Ring magazine is about boxing. Boxing is not mainstream. You got Al Heyman and others trying to make it mainstream. HBO, Showtime do a sensational job. Al Heyman is trying to do his part, getting them aired on ESPN, getting it aired, his championship boxing on NBC and other outlets. But the reality of the situation is when we talk about the major sports in North America, we're not talking boxing. We're talking NFL first. We're talking college football. We're talking NBA. We're talking Major League Baseball. We're talking, even golf and tennis to a lesser degree, hockey, NASCAR, etc. Boxing's last on the list in America, not worldwide, but in America. So when you look at it from that perspective, Ring Magazine is one of the brightest spots for boxing. You want to know about boxing, you go to Ring Magazine. And to have an MMA fighter on the cover is doing a disservice to the fighters in boxing, because somebody outside of boxing is the individual that you're either giving publicity to or using to bring publicity to your magazine and therefore your sport, because you don't think there's anybody in the sport appealing enough to grace the cover. To me, the person that should be insulted by what he said was Oscar De La Hoya. Now, I'm not going to go there, because my thing is, I swear I think Floyd crossed the line. He talked about Oscar dressing in drag and, using coke or whatever it is. Whatever went on in Oscar De La Hoya's past. I believe on the part of Floyd Money Mayweather, that was a low blow. You didn't have to go there. He was speaking up for Richard Schaefer, but he used Oscar De La Hoya knocking him down to uplift Richard Schaefer. Richard Schaefer doesn't need that kind of help. Richard Schaefer has an exceptional reputation in the sport of boxing as a promoter, as a former employee of Golden Boy Promotions. So Floyd didn't need to go there about Oscar. It was really unnecessary. But in terms of what he said about Ronda Rousey gracing the cover of Ring Magazine, I totally agree with them. And in no way did I interpret it as disrespectful to Ronda Rousey. I interpreted it as Ring Magazine really a shot at them, because why do you need an MMA fighter on a cover of a boxing magazine when boxing needs all the help it can get, especially with Canelo and Cotto coming up against one another November 21st.
Okay.
Why do you need that?
All right. Point of clarity for those who don't know. Oscar De La Hoya has owned Ring Magazine for the last 10 years. So Floyd was taking shots at Oscar for putting Ronda Rousey on the cover.
That is
He's
correct.
also suggesting that maybe Oscar, as a promoter, was angling toward trying to sign Ronda as a client, hence put her on the cover to say, look what I can do for you,
true.
okay? I do think maybe between the lines, Floyd was taking a little shot at Ronda here. Again, I'm interpreting the quote as, what has boxing come to? They put an MMA fighter on the cover of Ring Magazine, and even worse, it's a woman. That's how it came across to me, but that's just me. Maybe not. But now let's go back to the essence of what Floyd was saying. I'm with you on this. You and I both, longtime boxing fans, hardcore boxing fans. I've read Ring Magazine for years and years, and I always considered it a boxing Bible. It's hallowed. You know, the cover, it's Muhammad Ali. It started in 1922, and it covered, obviously, the golden age of heavyweight boxing. Okay, so what has boxing come to? Well, if, in fact, Floyd Money Mayweather has retired, as he insists, boxing continues to die. And as you say, who are you going to put on the cover now? Timothy Bradley Jr., Canelo? I don't know. It's just not good enough. If Oscar, as the owner of this publication, wants to sell magazines, which he clearly does, man, I'd put Ronda on the cover in a heartbeat. Because Ronda is by far the biggest draw in MMA, in UFC, because she's much bigger to me than any male draw in UFC.
She is right now, for sure.
Way bigger. Come on, let's just be honest about it. So can I blame him for saying, well, okay, we're joining the times here. We're back to, we're back to the future here. The future is Ronda Rousey right now. So will he sell more magazines than putting Timothy Bradley Jr. on the cover? Yeah, he will.
Well,
trust me on that.
Yeah, he definitely will, but it doesn't take away from the disrespect it does to the industry of boxers. And that's the point. This is not about Ronda Rousey.
Yep.
We know that she'll sell more than any boxer out there today. We can garner that. We understand that, and we understand that if you're in the business of making money, if you're some businessman out there, Skip, that happens to own Ring Magazine, then you don't care. But if you're a former champion yourself, as a boxer who is now a promoter, meaning Golden Boy Promotions, and you are attached to a sport that you helped sustain, if not uplift, to a new stratosphere, particularly in the pay-per-view age, to then turn around and to give that kind of shine to an MMA fighter. It is a form of disrespect.
Sure it is.
To all of those fighters out there, because you're saying they're not marketable, they can't sell. That's not knocking Ronda Rousey. That's recognizing her cachet. But in the flip side, it's acknowledging we don't have anybody in our sport comparable to that. And what Floyd is saying is, Oscar De La Hoya, how can you, of all people, assist in that imagery? If it were me, if it were a businessman, that would be different. But you, a former champion in this sport, going this route, Floyd has a point. He has a point.
Okay, but I know you're with me on this. There was this golden age of boxing that you enjoyed as a kid, and I covered some of it, but when it's Ali, Frazier, Ali, Foreman, Ali, even Holmes, it's just greatness. The heavy
Holmes, Cooney.
Yeah, it's just great. And,
Sugar Ray Leonard.
Again, in those days, you wouldn't see a Ronda Rousey on the cover of Ring because
I wish we'd see those days again.
Oh man, so do I. Do I miss them? But I'm afraid they're gone.
I miss it desperately. I miss it desperately. And as much as I love the heavyweight, Skip, I love the welterweight division too.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I go back to the days of Wilfredo Benitez and Salvador Sanchez and Roberto Duran. Pepino Cuevas, oh my Lord, Aaron Pryor, Skip, Aaron Pryor.
I agree, and Sugar Ray.
I miss him. Oh, Alexis Aguero. Oh, don't get me started. I'm just having I miss those days.
Gone.
Miss those days.
Ooh. Ooh, Kristaps Porzingis' game-winning buzzer beater versus the Hornets was waved off, but he finished with his fourth double-double in 9 career games. And according to Elias, he became the youngest Knicks player ever with 15 rebounds in a game. Stephen A., are you encouraged or discouraged by this loss?
No, I'm very encouraged by this guy. And you know, Phil Jackson is looking better and better as the season progresses. First of all, he had about 15 rebounds. Secondly, he shoots well from the free throw line. That's good. He can move. He's athletic. That's good. It seems to me that the only thing that he needs to work on is just bulking up, getting in the weight room, doing some squats, some bench presses, and things of that nature. But clearly he has the height already. He's not scared of the big moment. And the fact that Derek Fisher and those boys had him out there in that particular situation, I think speaks well for him. The 2 games prior to this, he only scored in single digits. I actually one of the 2, and he had shot 3 of 8 and 3 of 11 in both of those games. But he can hit free throws. He can move without the ball. He's athletic. He's got some heart. He's not scared. There's a tremendous upside. And I like what I'm seeing from him. I'm pleasantly surprised. I must admit that. It looks like Phil Jackson did the right thing here with that number 4 overall pick. It still remains to be seen because I'm watching Emmanuel Mudiay do his thing. And I understand that, you know, we got to look at Porzingis and give him some plus marks because Carmelo hasn't been playing that great. He shot 12 of 25 last night, finished with 25 points, but he's shooting 34% from the field on the season and 20% from three-point range. He can do better. And once he starts doing better, assuming he continues to get healthier and do his thing, that should open things up for Porzingis even more. But I must say that I'm very, very impressed with what I have seen thus far. He's making a believer out of me in terms of his potential, Skip, because you just heard so much about how he's going to be, you know, a 3 to 4 year project, because I never saw him play before coming in to the NBA. But you see what he's doing right now, and he's validating the faith that the Knicks have shown in him, averaging, you know, 11 and 9 on the season as a rookie. I got to give credit where credit is due in that regard. I'm still not letting Phil Jackson off the hook, though, because he's getting paid 10 to 12 million a year to be the president, and it wasn't to draft and build this team over 5 years. It was because you were marquee, you had a level of cachet attached to your name, and you're supposed to be able to go out there and recruit somebody big time to come and play with Carmelo Anthony. You didn't give Carmelo Anthony $122 million to just be somebody that was on an average or below average team for the next 3 or 4 years. You're supposed to go out there and attract somebody. So I'm still not letting Phil Jackson off the hook in that regard, but I will let him off the hook with Porzingis because I'm impressed with what I'm seeing. I'm liking him more and more and more. I watched that game last night. He's impressing me.
You know what? I'm becoming a Knicks fan. It's like the weirdest thing.
Really?
Yeah, I can't help myself. I turned it on. I keep watching the score on .com, and then I say,
"You're trolling
them."
They're
I'm not trolling them.
I mean in a positive way. In a positive way.
And I'm seeing the score, and there at Charlotte. Charlotte's decent this year, you know. And I'm thinking, because Charlotte blew out the Bulls, remember, in Charlotte the other night. I thought, oh, okay, okay. I'm going to check this out. So I turn it on at halftime, and I can't quit watching it. And it's partially because of this kid, but I like the team. I look down the box score. I like Aflalo. I liked Robin Lopez until he let what's his name beat him, Cody Zeller at the end of the game. But I like the parts of the team. I'm not saying it can even make the playoffs, but it's fun to watch the Knicks now, mostly because of this kid. And I still say, I watched it in real time, and when Porzingis let the shot go, I thought it was away in time. I did. Maybe I'm rooting for the Knicks, but it looked like just split second it had left his hand. And if the tie goes to the runner in baseball, maybe it was like a tie with the buzzer. I thought they should give it to him, but then I watch it in slow motion. Maybe it was still barely touching his fingertips when red light goes off.
It was.
Yeah, it's very close, though. In real time, I thought it was good. His teammates thought it was good, and I like the emotion. It's been so long since I saw the Knicks have, like, end-of-game emotion where they're hugging each other, and it was fun to watch. It was like, wow, the Knicks are happy.
Well,
how could that be?
They're back.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I gotta give some love to a few people. We all know how I go off about my New York Knicks.
Yeah.
They're making you listen. They're not They're not an embarrassment.
Yeah.
They're competitive in practically every game. They're fighting. Derek Fisher's doing a good job. Kurt Rambis with Jim Clemens and those boys are doing a good job. These guys go out every single game. They're playing hard. They're going after it. They're not wilting beneath the pressure. It takes greatness to beat them in a lot of situations. I'm seeing a team that's fighting. I'm seeing a team that's feisty, and I'm actually looking forward to ending my boycott and going back to watch them again this year.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to it. I like. Well, listen, man. Listen, I've been suffering for years with the New York Knicks, with the exception of their 54-win season that Mike Woodson delivered. But I got to take a moment to give you. We know what Derek Fisher went through, at the start this season.
Yep.
Could have been a distraction. He's doing a good job.
He is.
Coaching staff is doing a good job. They're fighting. They're playing hard. And Porzingis can play. I mean, he's got an upside. There's reasons to go to the Garden now to watch this team play.
Yep.
And that's all I can ask for. I hope it continues. I hope I don't look like a damn fool where I'm hoodwinked into supporting them again and then they let me down with lackluster effort. I mean, I'm weary of that, Skip. You know how emotional I get with my Knicks. But I'm starting to feel good about them because they're fighting. They're fighting out there. They're feisty. And I like it.
Now, to the point you made about Carmelo, I'm a big fan. You're a big fan. You know him very well. I know him a little. I want to see him join the party a little bit more. Now, I will point out that in the third quarter last night, he just went crazy. He made 6 out of 8 shots. It was vintage Melo. Fourth quarter, pretty good, made 2 out of 4 shots. But in the end, when they gave him the ball, ISO, you just got, I think it was Marvin Williams, I can't remember who it was guarding him, and he lost the handle a little bit, couldn't get a hold of it, shot it from the side, from the baseline, and hit the side of the backboard. It's not what I want to see from Melo. I'm nitpicking here, but I'm just saying he at some point he's got to turn back into the superstar who could carry a team that's pretty good to the last playoff slide. Because he's good enough. Well, I think there's enough around him now with the kid and all the other little pieces. I think Carmelo can be good enough to carry this team into playoff contention. That's what I want to see.
I think you're right. I think that when you see the parts around him, if they continue to grow and play as feisty as they have been playing, this is a team that should win enough games to contend for a playoff spot if Carmelo does his job. So as long as Porzingis and the others continue to grow and play hard and be feisty, then we're going to look at Carmelo and say to him, what you got for us? You're right about that.
Okay. And here's my last question to you. I watch the Knicks telecast every night when I turn it on, and then I often watch the Knicks postgame with Serbiak and company, and I just want to get this straight because this kid has brought us to the point where he is now good enough. I want to make sure we're saying his name correctly. I say Porzingis because that's what they say on the broadcast.
Yeah.
Is that what it is, or is it Zingis? Or
Zingis?
Yeah. Which way is it?
You know what? I've heard both, but last night I was watching and I heard it on the broadcast. This is Porzingis.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
So let's go with Porzingis.
So I'm going to go with Porzingis.
Let's go with Porzingis.
You are. Is that all right?
Porzingis.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with it.
I heard on the Van Pelt show late they were saying
both.
Zinger. You know,
Porzingis works for me.
Yeah. Well, it's time to whatever we're going to call him. We're going to be calling him that a lot because he is proving he belongs in the National Basketball
Knickerbockers, we're encouraged. We just had a positive Knicks topic.
Yep.
This is amazing. All right.
Yeah. Miracles do happen.
They host the Cavs at the Garden. That's on Friday, so that'll be a good one, a tough test, of course. We have a reunion of sorts tonight when the Jets take on the Bills. Both teams looking up at the undefeated defending Super Bowl champion Patriots, of course, in the AFC East. It looks like if Buffalo and New York make the playoffs, it's going to have to be with a wild card berth. Right now, the Jets have the first wild card spot while the Bills are on the outside looking in. The two teams face off tonight in the Meadowlands. Skip?
Yes.
Who wins?
The Bills win 24-22. And Stephen A. Smith, you know what has shocked me the most about the Jets this year? Obviously not the defense. Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I remind you, once upon a time, speaking of Buffalo, Ryan Fitzpatrick was viewed as the savior of the Bills.
Yeah.
Remember, going back 4 years, they beat the Patriots early one year in Buffalo. They gave him a big new long-term contract under Chan Gailey. And slowly but surely, he turned back into Ryan Fitzpatrick. Well, I'm hoping, maybe against hope, that tonight Ryan Fitzpatrick turns a little more back into the old, just pretty good Ryan Fitzpatrick. Right now, his QBR for the year is ahead of Tom Brady's.
Wow.
It is. It's better than Tom Brady's. So that's been the shock of shocks to me about the Jets. That's mostly why they are 5-3. But I also remind you, Tyrod Taylor, when he's been able to start, is 4-2 as the starter of the Buffalo Bills. So I'm going to take Tyrod over Ryan Fitzpatrick tonight. The season basically starts tonight for Rex's team. Here they come.
Well, I think that's very plausible on your part. I can't knock that, Skip, but I'm going with the Jets to win this game 24-22. And the reason why is because while Tyrod Taylor has to go up against that Jets defense, with the New York Jets and Ryan Fitzpatrick are going up against what one would deem a relatively suspect defense in Buffalo at this particular juncture. We know they can play, but we also know they haven't lived up to expectations. Injuries may have had something to do with it, but it was also, at least at one point in this season, a disconnect between Rex Ryan and the players. Sure. And obviously Rex is not the defensive coordinator, but we all know he's the face of any defense that, you know, that he's the head coach of. He was that way in New York. He's perceived as being that way in Buffalo, even though Dennis Thurman is there. In the end, what it comes down to is this. I think the Jets defense is elite enough to neutralize Tyrod Taylor when it counts. I don't think the Bills' defense is elite enough to stop Brandon Marshall with Eric Decker, the Jets' running game, and a Ryan Fitzpatrick that's not going to beat himself. I'm picking the Jets to win 24-20 in this game.
Yet I remind you, Ivory, after leading the league in rushing after whatever 4 or so games, last 3 he's been held to 84 total yards rushing. So I don't know if they run the ball the way they were. So it's all about Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing to those receivers. We'll see what happens.
The Bills certainly ran the ball well last week. That's
did.
for sure.
Very well.
All right, so Stephen A's going with Fitzy and Skip's going with Double T. That's what it is. We shall see. Tomorrow, obviously, we're going to get into all the NFL games. We're going to pick those, everything from Week 10. Playoff implications, it is starting to matter. Stephen A., thank you kindly. Skip Bayless, I'm Molly Karam. Appreciate you hanging with us. See you tomorrow. Appreciate you listening to us. Catch First Take, as always, weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, and catch The Rear at 1 p.m. Eastern on The Deuce.
It's a football Sunday doubleheader. First in Green Bay, the Packers face the Lions.
Got it! Touchdown!
Then at MetLife Stadium, the Giants host the undefeated Patriots. Coverage begins Sunday at noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.